Welcome to episode 232 of the Work Shoot Wrestling podcast. This is Corey Richmond, joined as always by Jason Brooks. Jason, another entertaining week of wrestling in the books.
Yep.
For the first time in a while, I can actually say that I watched a lot of entertaining wrestling. I think we're going to agree on some, disagree on quite a bit. Right before we went on the air, we had some interesting discussions, wrestling and non-wrestling related. And right before, we found out that we thought one show was better on Wednesday, one show was worse. And, let's start right there because I thought AEW was a fantastic show. One of the best shows they've put on since the new year.
What? One of their best shows? Where are you getting this from, one of their best shows? They had a women's match that was sloppy and terrible, and we don't know what – we knew Ivelisse is a veteran, but they did nothing with that. They had – two hardcore matches, which generally don't do anything for me. Why are we getting thumbtacks in a match where it's a TV title match and it's the guy's first night there? And now it's a no DQ match. Get out! Come on. We had the Bucks match was fun, but that wasn't a great match. Come on. The tag match took forever. 16 minutes. Oh my God. Can we get a backstage promo? Can we find out about someone else who it's just match after match after match?
Okay, so wait, all right, so we're gonna throw it. All right, yeah, I need to see Dexter Loomis in another wonderful match that nobody cares about. I gotta see,
No, I'm talking about. Hold on. You're talking about AEW being a good show. We're not talking about NXT right now. We're talking about AEW being a good show.
Wait, you just said the crap that was in AEW. I'm going to throw the crap that was on NXT. You had
this. No, I am talking specifically about AEW. We can talk about NXT. I am talking about the things I laid out with because I have issues with NXT as well. But I'm telling you, you said AEW was a phenomenal show. What? I'm saying it was in no way a phenomenal show. It was okay. It was fine. It was okay.
All right. Before we forget, and we try to throw each other out of the window here. Before everybody forgets, you can follow us on Twitter at WorkShootPod, wherever you listen to podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. We will give you your comment on air. And thank you as always for listening. But Jay, as always, you are wrong on this one. I thought that the Eddie Kingston promo to start off the show was fantastic.
I like that. That was good.
Within a minute of his promo, he mattered. For some people, you had seen Eddie Kingston before. I know one of the things like you spoke about Eddie Edwards, which we'll maybe get into later on with Slammiversary, a guy wrestling in a T-shirt. Who cares about? Eddie Kingston was wrestling. Not a guy who's in terrific shape by any stretch, but you didn't care by that promo. He was a guy who had your heart by the commentary they gave in that match. Thumb catch, fine. It was a little bit of a hardcore match. And yes, the idea that AEW is saying the words it's a no DQ match when every match in AEW is no DQ.
Was it a silly match? I like the promo. If they would have just had it wasn't a great match. How was it a great match? He's throwing a guy through thumbtacks. They're doing a bunch of tricks and gimmicks. That doesn't make a great match to me. There's been great hardcore matches, but generally a great hardcore match is because there's a deep storyline built in of these guys hating each other and wanting to kill each other, and that's why you have a hardcore match. You don't just have a hardcore match because, we're just going to have a hardcore match. The match made no sense to why they have it. Great. Kingston comes out. He cuts a great promo. Great. Have a match. Have a regular match. Have a 8-minute match where Kingston gets in all the offense. Cody wins in the end. Eddie Kingston gets put over. Great. They have to have this 15-minute, 20-minute match with tables and thumbtacks. Come on.
Hold on. Just like Ricky Starks a couple of weeks ago, this guy's wrestling for his.
That was a good match. That was a good match. This was a hardcore match for no reason. Why is this a hardcore match?
Because this, just like he said in his promo, this is once again you're putting the idea that Cody is this champion, that he was facing nobodies, these young guys that weren't on his level, and he's finally facing somebody who's a veteran who's going to actually challenge him.
What does that have to do with the heart? What does that have to do with having thumbtacks and gimmicks and tricks for the match? What does that have to do with that? My big issue is that it was a hardcore match and it wasn't necessary. A hardcore match is supposed to be two people who've had a long feud, who hate each other, want to beat the shit out of each other. Not, hey, let's just have a hardcore match.
Fine. You know what? I'm not going to convince you that this wasn't a great match or a good match or whatever. I felt the storytelling made this a really good match. I felt commentary helped the match. The idea that they was talking about Eddie Kingston had to go and sell his wrestling boots to pay his rent because of the pandemic. I know that, like, when you told me, and maybe this is not for the show, but you didn't watch, like, Slammiversary, you didn't watch the commentary, so you didn't have to suffer through, you know, some of the bad commentary. I don't know if you watched commentary for this show. The idea that they explained on commentary that he had to sell his boots just to be able to pay his rent.
What are you talking about? What does me not listening to commentary on Slammiversary have to do with anything?
I don't know if you listen to commentary in this show, but the idea...
Of course I listen to the commentary. I watched the show. I couldn't listen to the commentary for Slammiversary because it was like kind of cutting in and out, whatever. Of course, what does that have to do with anything?
Commentary helped the story of the storytelling.
Of course, I'm not talking about Eddie Kingston in the match and how desperate he was. I'm saying, why the fuck was it a DQ match? And why was it 20 minutes long? That made no sense to me. You could have cut the match by, you know, have 3/4 length, have maybe a hardcore element in there or two, and tell the same story. You could have done all the same things with a lot less time. And maybe they could have a video package for fucking Diamante, who I have no idea who she is. And she's fighting next week, Sheeta, right? Why don't we establish other people? They did more for Eddie Kingston in the time he was there than they've done for half the women on the roster.
But you know, you're saying two different points here. You see, one point here, you're right. You should be able to go and build two different characters, but you don't have to go and limit the time of a good match in order to do both.
The match was a little long. You don't need a 20-minute, 15-minute, you don't need these long matches. You don't need a long match like that and a match that basically was just all hardcore elements. For instance, I'll give the Ricky Starks match. I loved it. It was a good match. Ricky Starks had the package. I thought it was well done. I thought it was good. Now, I get one thing that you could say is you could say, well, Eddie Kingston's a hardcore wrestler and Cody wanted to get in Eddie Kingston's world. That's what you could say. And you could say that. But they haven't established that as Eddie Kingston's world because he just got there.
All right. We'll agree to disagree on this one. I think the idea of also just setting up different type of challenges for Cody, and you're getting him to be more of a champion that you could respect the idea of this title. That's the working man's title, and he's facing all challengers. Just like Tony Khan put out a tweet that fact next week Cody is going to be facing another top indie star, and the idea that Cody, and like I said, I think this is a two-part thing. One of it is Eddie Kingston's performance, and the idea that Cody, and you can say this is BS and who cares, but every week it appears right now that Cody doesn't know who his next contender is going to be because of the open challenge.
All right, I'm in agreement with all that. You're talking about something that I'm not talking about. I love that there's new challenges every week. I love that they're trying to establish new people. I just didn't think the match needed to be 15, 20 minutes, and it didn't need to have a hardcore element. That's what I'm saying. And to me, when a match is hardcore for the sake of being hardcore, for me as a fan, it takes something away. That's me personally. I don't like seeing hardcore matches for the sake of hardcore matches. I think that's how I feel. I've never been a big hardcore wrestling fan unless it's a match that means something.
I'm not a fan of hardcore wrestling either. I felt it worked for that match. I don't want to see hardcore in every match on the show, but
we had two hardcore matches on one show.
Okay, like I said, we'll agree.
Did we not? And we don't need to keep talking about the Kingston match. We could talk about other matches, but we did have two hardcore matches on one show, which I don't know that that's a great idea either. And the Bucks match we can get into. Let's just talk about it now. I know you like I know you liked that match. I thought that was a fun match, and for it to be a Falls Count Anywhere match was fine because these guys have had feuds. They've whatever, and to have
killed himself for that table spot, which is
but they've had they've had feuds. They've been going after each other for a little bit. to have that be a falls count anywhere match is fine, and it's fun and it's okay. But I still think these matches are too long, especially when you know what the outcome's going to be. So that's my take. I think the matches are too long. But
all right, like I said, but one of the things, I don't know if you said it on air, but right before we started the show, you said that none of these matches mean anything. I disagree on that idea. I mean, I think you're building these teams up to be who's the next contender. You're building up stories, like the idea of 5 versus Hangman Page. You were still building up the idea.
Come on, 5.
Who's a really good match?
Oh, come on. You knew he wasn't going to. Adam Page is the tag team champion. He's in the elite. He's going against someone named 5.
This guy also faced, the same guy who faced Kenny Omega a couple of months back and had a really good match against him.
A couple of months ago? I don't even know who 5 is. Come on, Corey. Come on. That should be a squash match. He's the tag team champion. He wrestled for the world title. Right. It shouldn't be a 7-minute match with a character they've never established named 5. He should give him give him his clothesline and put the match to bed. Now the angle after I liked. I really liked that part. But you make that match 2 minutes and he kills him. That's a squash match.
All right. I guess I don't disagree with that point. I mean, I thought it was a good match, but you're absolutely right. That should have been a squash. But I thought it was a good match. I mean, I guess that's the difference of the two. I mean, you got a point there. But like I said, I thought that developed story. You have a match set up for next week for the tag team titles.
I did like that angle. Yeah, absolutely. I guess my thing overall, Corey, is like AEW has really talented people. They do really innovative things, and we can go things one by one. But I think they overbook stuff. I think they try to do all the gimmicks. Like, let's have this match and let's do all these spots. And I think the show doesn't breathe enough. I just don't think they let the show breathe enough. And part of that is probably the ratings war, which they annihilated NXT. And if that's what their goal is, they're winning at that goal. Completely understand that. But for me as a viewer, personally, and I'm closer to the NXT demographic audience than the audience that they're trying to get. But, I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I thought the show was really good. You thought the other show was really good. But
the tag match, at the end, that 16 minutes long, it's such a long match.
It seems like your big problem is the length of these matches. And I guess the fact that most of these WWE main roster matches, a lot of these are so short nowadays that we have long matches in AEW I enjoy, and maybe I'm looking past it. And maybe that's just a difference, the fact that...
I think you can get this, but I think you can tell the same story without having as long of a match. I don't think you need as long... And main roster matches on Raw, a lot of them are long. I mean, Aleister Black and Rollins is a long match. I mean, Raw has a lot of long matches because of the fact that they're 3 hours. So I actually, SmackDown's a little different, but...
A lot of these, basically, you're having rest holds, commercial break, rest holds, commercial break, and then you're having interesting stuff happen after the second commercial break. So, I mean,
yeah, but I don't know. I mean, like the Rollins Black stuff, I think was they've had some really good chemistry and some really good matches.
But I don't think we'll have enough time for that disaster. But
no, but I'm saying, listen, I'm not I think Raw is okay, whatever. I think SmackDown's awful. So this is not being a WWE apologist. I'm just saying I think you can get the same point across. I thought NXT, the Dexter Lumis match, I don't think they needed it to be that long. But so I think you can get the same point across because, Corey, they need to establish other people. And we're going to get to this women's tag cup. They've established 5 women, and they're going to have 16 apparently in this. Where are they going to get 16 women who anyone has cared about? Instead of doing a tag thing, do some highlight packages. Have these women cut a promo. Why is it the first time I heard something from Sheeta was 2 weeks ago? She's been the champion. She's been there since the beginning.
Great. I mean, I said in our show notes, I didn't know they had 16 women under contract, and I don't think they actually do. I mean, I think it's a nice idea about having a women's tournament, but maybe that should be something in another year when you have things that are more developed. And I think that it's really cool that you brought in Ivelisse. And do I think Ivelisse most likely should have won the match because she's the more established star? I mean, I've heard, Ivelisse has heat in pretty much every company she's ever worked with because she's got attitude and she believes in the stuff she believes in. Maybe she didn't, they didn't want to work with her, but they brought her in. That's up to them for who they want to work with. So I think DeMonte, from the stuff I've seen in the couple of times she's been there, I think she's okay. I mean, so we'll see how that works out next week in her match. I mean, she's got a 2-3 record.
I mean, Corey, and we're going to talk about Impact here. We're going to talk about him down the line. But, I cared more about that tag match with Tasha Steelz and Kiera Hogan. And that was the first time I've seen, Tasha Steelz and Kiera Hogan I've seen, and Jessica Havoc's been there. The other, Namonte, I've never seen her before. I cared more about that than the Ivelisse. What is this? What do these matches mean? So I think AEW, and I want to say this, I thought it was a good show. I did not think it was a horrible show. So I want to make that very, very clear. I thought it was a good show. I thought it was a fun show in a lot of ways.
Okay.
I just didn't think it was a great show. And I think AEW's had maybe 10 great shows since they started. And that's okay. Every show is not going to be great. I think the two best matches of the night were on NXT. Now, NXT also had problems itself, but that three-way match was awesome. That was a phenomenal match. So
really good match, absolutely.
Yeah. So that
I win.
Yeah, I'm glad Bronson Reed won. It's good that they gave him a shot. And I mean, Corey, here's the issue with NXT. You've got Chris Jericho, you've got the Elite. I mean, they're an established company. NXT's developing people, and and so it's gonna be there. I mean, they got really trounced yesterday. That's a very worrying sign for NXT. And I mean, I know we usually talk about the ratings at the end, and I think we should talk about WWE's ratings at the end. But I mean, we can just say it: 845 to 615. I mean, I think that's the biggest gap we've seen, right, since the beginning.
I think that's one of the biggest since they decided to do the build for Gargano versus Ciampa when they did that, basically that 1 hour. That they really didn't do much wrestling at all.
So what does that? I guess the question is for both of us, what does that tell us? What does it tell us now? Because now we're starting to get some patterns, right? We're starting to see what's happening. So I don't know.
I think partly one means that, I was telling you off air yesterday, whenever Jon Moxley's on the show, they win. Star power means something. There were unless I missed it,
Moxley wasn't on the show.
What'd you say?
Was Moxley on the show?
He did a promo, and then he was also he went and saved Darby Allin after Darby.
Oh yeah. But he didn't have a match. I guess they said he was gonna do something, but he didn't have a match. Yeah.
Oh, and just speaking about that, I mean, I love Ricky Starks, but Ricky Starks has to be careful because he almost killed Darby Allin. Apparently, I think Darby Allin might have got a concussion after that Ricky Starks attack. So
yeah.
Even though that's one thing I want to say, I really like the idea of Brian Cage and Ricky Starks as a tag team together. I think that could be an interesting little combination together.
Yeah, they have more tag teams than they do women's wrestlers.
Yeah, that is definitely true.
That's a problem. Someone put the list of their tag team. I mean, they could have a company just based off of tag team. The first tag team company in the history of wrestling.
Yeah, put that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they have such a plethora of tag teams. It's amazing. And obviously some of those teams are going to get lost in the shuffle, and that's also a reason why. And maybe part of it, Corey, is that video packages the audience doesn't watch.
You know what?
When there's a video package, because their whole thing, right, is this is for the marks of the marks. And what do the marks want to see? They want to see PWG. They want to see guys, Canadian destroyers. They want to see guys flying around the ring. And that's what they want to see. So, they're not going to give us a 5-minute video package because people might turn that off and go to NXT. So I get that. To me, I thought wrestling was more about character development. And I think AEW does, and to their credit, I'm not trying to bury AEW because I think they're doing some fantastic things. And they're in a tough spot because they want to win the ratings war while also establishing some of their characters too. So they're in a really, really difficult spot.
Yeah. Before we move on, I just want to quickly, I think one of the main reasons, and you can tell me maybe I'm crazy here, that I think AEW wins a lot of weeks, and this is a big thing, at least in my opinion. We already know pretty much the whole entire card for AEW next week. We know we're getting a tag team title match. We know we're getting the Tornado tag team match. We know we're getting a Cody match. We know we're getting the 10-man tag. We know we're getting the women's, I think, non-title match. We know that basically the whole entire card for next week. We barely know anything for the following week for NXT. So, I mean, I think that helps. Every week going into these shows, we have a good idea what we're seeing for the following week. So we anticipate.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% with that. I think NXT does do that. I think AEW absolutely does a better job. They absolutely will say this is happening next week. This is happening. They'll come back from break. This is happening next week. This is happening next week. I think they do. I think they do a much better job than NXT does of that. And NXT does do it. I just think AEW does it a little bit. They do it better. Yeah, they're absolutely better at that. I agree with you.
All right. Quickly, thing before we move on, and I don't know how much we'll get into this, but before AEW ended last night, we had the return of Sammy Guevara, who was one of the people who was indirectly involved with the Speak Out movement, where he had comments that were brought up about Sasha Banks a couple of years back, and Tony Khan took immediate action and had him go through sensitivity training, and he was gone from AEW TV for 30 days, and he came back in the closing angle under a mask. Jay, how'd you think that was handled? Do you think it was the right way to bring him back as a surprise and basically as nothing happened? Do you think they should have brought him back just more of a he returned, or do you think they handled it the right way? Because some people online were a little bit of like he was brought back not as like a conquering hero, but maybe too big of a deal of him returning. It should have been done a little bit more, just like he's back.
Yeah. I think that's probably fair. I think the idea of they brought him back too soon. I mean, what is too soon? Like, what does that mean? So I think them bringing him back when they did, I think was fine. But you're right, maybe him coming back, but also he's a heel, and like he's supposed to do heelish things. So that I don't know. I don't have a big problem with it. I would say that the criticism is fair, that it was maybe not super tactful. So I think the criticism was fair. But I also think like, what are you going to do? Are you going to fire him? You're going to keep him out for 6 months? I mean, how are you going to make this look? So I think the suspension and everything was fine. And maybe you don't have him on TV next week. Who knows what they do? But yeah, I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I mean, I think that you most likely should have. See, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a weird one on how you handle something. Like you said, he's a heel, and but the like bringing him back as like a big surprise thing at the end as a reveal, kind of was I don't know. It rubbed me a little bit the wrong way. But being a heel character, it made it a little bit better. I don't know. It was a little awkward to me. But I understand that it was 30 days. You finished your sensitivity training, and if he's performed what he did, I mean, I did think it was a little scummy the fact someone online, like 10 minutes after it aired, decided to air another clip of him, like saying, something else immature he said back in the day, like basically 10 minutes later, to try to bury the guy again when, he made a mistake. It was a couple of years ago. He was a dumb kid, and I'm sure that a lot of these things were mentioned. If he does something stupid after this, see you most likely from AEW, but, it's time to give him a second chance,
Yeah, I mean, he said it years ago. I mean, it was a horrible comment. He got suspended for it. I hope they took his pay away. But he's back.
Women's health center and stuff.
Yeah, but he's back, and this is we're all supposed to be growing in this journey of being anti-sexist and anti-racist and things like that. So he said something that was stupid. And so, again, let things go now. And then, but if there's something else that happens, he deservedly will be fired as a result, I think.
I agree. So let's move on to a little more on NXT. Jay, how do you think they handled this NXT Takeover 30? The idea that we're gonna have a 5-way for the ladder match for the North American title. The idea that we want to get more guys to have an opportunity to have a shot at the title. So after 2 weeks, Keith Lee doesn't want to defend it anymore.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved what he said. Like, I was given an opportunity, and I took that opportunity and I rose through it, and I want someone else to have this opportunity. So I thought the way he relinquished it was fantastic. And then Regal following up, and I was like, a bunch of 3-way matches. I love the tournament style. But I think the 3-way match, the first one they had with Bronson Reed, Gargano and Riddick was great. So we'll see how they continue to do it. But I thought that match was really fun. Corey, I love the end of the show with Cross.
What, Rocky IV?
I love to me. So one thing I think that I hope we don't see is, since Keith Lee became champion, the ratings haven't been great. And I hope that this, because I know me and you love Keith Lee, and I hope this isn't the ratings are shit with Keith Lee, so we have to get the title off of him and give it to someone else. And for me as a black man, give it to like a white guy. You know what I mean? I think so I hope they give him that chance with the title and see what happens. Because I don't think the ratings have anything to do with him. I think they have to do with John Moxley and Chris Jericho and the Young Bucks and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, the Rocky IV thing, I think that always plays well. I think it always plays well. I think it was great TV. I think it was great facials from both Keith Lee and Cross. It was great storytelling at the end. I thought that was really, really fantastic.
Well, I'm going to go twofold here. One, I thought NXT was a good show this past week. I didn't think it was a terrible show. I just thought AEW was a better show. So the 3-way match was really good. I was really impressed by Bronson Reed. I mean, I would have liked for Bronson Reed to get maybe a little bit more of a winning streak going into this, besides, basically beating Tony Nese. And maybe he won last week, which I don't remember, but I mean,
exactly. We don't need him to go into a winning streak. He just beat 2 established guys. He's established now. I
understand that. I'm just saying I would have just liked the idea for maybe more of
and I think that made him even more of the underdog though too. I think that made it even more of a surprise that he's getting the opportunity as well, that he hasn't had a win streak, that he's kind of been up and down. And you talk about me not listening to the commentary made a note of that, of like, he's the big underdog here. He's going against 2 established guys, and for him to win, it was like, oh my God, he won. That's so great. So I disagree. I think it's fine. I love how they did it, and they made it kind of a surprise, and the announcers spoke to that.
Okay, like I said, slight disagreement there, but I'm happy to see new fresh blood coming in. I mean, I don't think he has a chance in hell of winning. I think he's going to be the big guy for the ladder match for people to do spots off of. I think that's why he's in the match. Maybe this springboards him into future opportunities, and it's good to see, if they do more with him down the road. I didn't love the idea of how they set up this tournament. I mean, I would have liked the idea if we knew in advance the idea. If Keith Lee had won the title, he would relinquish the other one. I feel the idea of this whole entire thing was just, and we all know this was just a way to compete with AEW's card to begin with the Great American Bash. It's just a thing to get ratings, this whole entire Cole match to begin with. I love the idea Keith Lee won the title. I'm super afraid that he's going to lose the title at TakeOver 30. I think that's obvious. I think that you don't push Cross like this to have him lose basically, in basically, 3 weeks after 2 weeks after he basically debuted. So I think he's definitely win the title. But
yeah.
I don't love the way how they came to this conclusion. I'm glad he's no longer. We have one less champ because that whole thing I think is keeping the titles, 40 titles on everybody. I think is too much right now. I do think that one thing I did like, and I'd like to get your opinion on it. It's a minor thing. Do you like this whole Mercedes Martinez with Robert Stone?
Yeah, yeah. I think it could be, but it might make Robert Stone a little more serious. Like I liked him with Chelsea Green. I didn't think he was like that goofy with Chelsea Green. I thought he was okay. Where has she been, by the way? But whatever. Maybe she might have COVID. So that
her and Vanessa Bourne apparently on the main roster, but we never over to see them.
Yeah, they might both have COVID. I don't know. Juan Soto has COVID now. I bet him to win the MVP, so great for me. Hopefully he's okay, seriously. But so maybe that's what happened with Chelsea Green. I don't know. But I think if Robert Stone becomes a little bit more serious as a manager, I think he was really good with Chelsea Green. They had some vignettes and da. So and I don't know if Mercedes Martinez is a big on the mic stuff, but so I think he can help her. I mean, the Sashi Blackheart Mercedes Martinez match. I'm very excited about that. Very excited about that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think it's got a definitely a. If Robert Stone doesn't continue to look like a goofball and becomes more of a serious character, I think it could be a very solid pairing. I
agree. I mean, I think that's interesting. I think the end game is Rhea Ripley and Ripley versus Martinez, and down the line, winner faces, Io Shirai and stuff.
This is going to be a low blow, but look at that. A company recognizing that the women mean something and trying to push the women or give them a storyline.
Oh, we're talking about Impact already? I thought we were going to do that a little bit later.
Interesting, AEW.
There you go. One of us, interesting. Yeah, very true. Like I said, so that's the Wednesday Night Wars. Jay, what do you want to talk about next? I'll let you control the floor on this one.
Yeah. So I guess we should talk about Slammiversary and Impact. Corey and I watched. Well, I watched Impact last week because I switched my internet service, my internet TV service. So I have Sling now, which is Access TV. So, and then we did both watch Slammiversary. So I don't know, Corey. I'll start with you. What were your thoughts on Slammiversary? And all the returning guys, it's a really kind of multi-layered thing.
I thought as an overall show, I thought it was a positive. If you had never seen or had not watched Impact for quite a long time, I think it was a little bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I thought that the last if you watch a pay-per-view saying, do the last couple of matches get you, say, like, let me rephrase that. Do the title matches deliver? I would say this was a really good show. If you're saying as an overall top to bottom, did everything get you there? I would say it's a mixed bag. Like that women's gauntlet match, I think might go down as one of the worst pay-per-view matches of the year. I mean, it made Edge versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania passable. And so that's no longer the worst pay-per-view match of the year. Might be still the longest bad pay-per-view match of the year, but it's not the worst pay-per-view match of the year anymore. I mean, the return of the Motor City Machine Guns was awesome. I thought the women's title match was really, really good. I think that match was better than Nyla Rose versus Shida.
Absolutely.
Which I thought was one of the best women's matches I saw all year before that. So, I mean, that was a high bar to cross, at least in my book. I mean, I thought the world title match was a little bit of a mixed bag. I was impressed by Trey Miguel. I was impressed by some of the other guys in that match who I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
I think Eric Young was the big surprise. Did it let down a little bit? Yeah. EC3 coming back was cool. The Good Brothers, whatever. That didn't do much for me the two nights. Yeah. I'm going to let you talk here in 1 second, Jay. But
no, you're good.
I thought they should have definitely gone with Ace Austin, who you've seen a lot more than me because of his time in MLW. I thought he came across as a star. Felt he was kind of misused over the two nights that we saw. I don't think Eddie Edwards is much in 2020 as much of a star. I think he has a little bit more charisma than you do. I feel he's a Tommy Dreamer clone. If this was 1990, 96, 95, 97, and we were in ECW, he might be a bigger star. I think he was put in the title because he's safe, and maybe some of these other guys might not be on contract. But, I mean, some guys came off looking really good. I like the North. Would I come back and watch other weeks? Yes. But I wasn't blown away saying this is a new big product, and this is the product I'm going to watch every week if I've never seen the product before. But I'm a wrestling fan, so I watch wrestling.
Yeah, I agree. So the women's match I thought was the best match of the night. I thought the women's match was phenomenal. I did miss the Motor City Machine Guns. I think they were the first match against the Rascals, right? So I heard that was a really good match too. The world title match, it really did not do a lot for me. I thought they were trying to get too much going on. That's the train, by the way. There was too much going on there. I did not. They're trying to. Rich Swann was there. Eric Young was there. They were having. I don't know. I think it should have been more of either a three-way or even Ace Austin against Trey. Just kind of a showcase of some of their young guys. Now they're giving Trey the opportunity next week against Eddie Edwards for the title. I thought Eddie Edwards winning was a real lame to me. The Good Brothers did very little. Like they were fine, and then they had their promo on Tuesday, and I thought it was okay. The tag match was solid with the North. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was an amazing match. I'd say that I wasn't really blown away by much with Slammiversary. I thought it was a solid show, but I think it was more hype because of all the possible people that were going to come in there, and that kind of bore out because we watched Impact on Tuesday, and it seemed like more people. A lot of people were saying on Twitter, "Hey, I've never watched Impact before. I'm watching for the first time." So, that's a good sign for Impact. And they're definitely doing some things. They're trying to do some creative things. But I think Slammiversary as a show overall was okay. Like it was solid. With some good matches in between. But some of their acts, I think really, Trey and Ace Austin, and I'm glad Deonna Purrazzo won. I thought that was a tremendous match. So we'll see what they do moving forward. But Corey, Eddie Edwards, we argued about him before. Listen, I don't get it. I think the guy has no charisma. I've never thought he had charisma. I thought he was a great technical wrestler, and it was fun in a tag team with Davey Richards back in the day. I've never thought he had any charisma. I felt like when he cuts a promo, when he was cutting a promo on Tuesday, he was like trying to remember his lines. He doesn't look like a champion. He wrestles in a t-shirt. He just does nothing for me. And this is like your guy. I'm going to be a fighting he just does absolutely nothing for me. Absolutely nothing. And we'll see what they do moving forward. And Corey, you made a great point. You had Michael Elgin. He's gone. Tessa Blanchard. She's gone. Right. And they either have them or they have like a bunch of young guys, Trey and Ace Austin and those people. So it's like, hey, let's give it to Eddie Edwards, even if he's a transitional.
I was really impressed by Chris Bay.
Yes, that was a good match. That was a good match too. Yeah, definitely. But and you do something like, okay, let's give it to the known guy. We know he's not leaving anytime soon, and he'll be fine as the kind of babyface champion. And the idea that in those big shows, the WrestleManias, the SummerSlams, you usually want to end on a high note and end with the babyface winning. So I get that too, and I also think the angle was a bit about the Good Brothers. I think part of the reason why he won and Ace Austin didn't win is so they could have this Ace Austin feud and Madman against the Good Brothers at some point.
But if that was the case, then why not put the title on Trey Miguel or put it on I just forgot his name.
Rich Swann? Well, because they're doing the Eric Young and Rich Swann feud. And maybe they think Trey's not ready yet.
Well, but if that's the case, if you want to do the thing with the Good Brothers, you still have Ace Austin and Madman Fulton, I think his name is. You could have done that separately, and you could have still had the stuff with, Rich Swann and Eric Young, and you could have done all that stuff separately, afterwards. I mean, you could have still done some of that stuff. So, I mean, you could have had, a little bit more buzz, and maybe you didn't want to put the title on a former WWE guy and Rich Swann, and maybe, I don't know. I mean, but like I said, we're going to give him the benefit, but, we are forgetting the big return. EC3, he's back. I mean, your own narrative. I mean, I don't know if you. I think the idea of some of the stuff that he said about how all the things about how he saw how the Fiend was treated with Goldberg and with the big the Good Brothers has said with the WWE with Paul Heyman, all the things that people are saying on how they saw things were going down before they were leaving, on how
Eric Young said the same thing. Very interesting interview. Maybe we're gonna do another show this week. Maybe that'll be some of the things that we talk about. But yeah,
right. But, all these people, even if they weren't with COVID-19, they might have asked for their release anyway because saw how things were going on. It's gonna be interesting to see how some of these guys with a little bit more freedom, supposedly. I mean, we saw how Heath, in a funny line he said, when asking for his last name, he said, I don't have a last name yet. I mean, we'll see how he's treated. He looks like he might be a job guy there anyway, just like he was at WWE. But we're going to see if these guys actually have true character development now that they're no longer in the WWE system.
Well, some of them definitely will be. I mean, EC3 was a main eventer there. Eric Young is already involved with Rich Swann, who Josh Matthews kept saying, and he said this he repeated himself a lot on Slammiversary and Impact, that Rich Swann was, before he got injured, was really getting the biggest fan support. So that was interesting. So they're having Eric Young go after kind of the biggest babyface. So they're kind of having him do a bunch of things. So yeah, we'll see. I think these guys will be established. I think they're doing something with EC3 and Moose for the fake TNA title. I don't know if they're gonna have that match at some point, but probably. But yeah, I think EC3 is gonna be one of the top guys there, because here's the thing, and they did this with him in NXT. He has star potential. He really does. And so I think eventually the plan will be to make him a champion. I mean, I think he's champion before, by this time next year, I think he's the champion.
And we got one more domino to fall, and hopefully we'll find out, I guess, either next week or soon afterwards, once hopefully he's cleared of COVID. We've got the former Rusev, still out there as the last major, I think, name of the WWE guys. ACH. I'm not Leo Rush, of guys who haven't signed anywhere. So
Leo Rush may retire. He's talking about retiring.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he's talking about he might not come back. What do you do? A couple things with Rusev. Let's talk about Rusev real quick, right? He's the biggest star of any of these guys who got released. Yeah. I think he has the most potential. He could do funny. He could do serious. He's great in the ring. He's got a known presence. If you're AEW, they've got so many new people in there that they're still working on establishing. I mean, God bless Lance Archer. He killed like 3 people. You know what I mean? But they still are working on establishing him. They're working on establishing Cage. They're working on establishing Luke Harper. They need to establish women, these women. So like, there's a lot of stuff AEW needs to do in terms of establishing some of their characters. Then do they just bring in Rusev? And if you're Rusev, do you want to go someplace where that's like, they're still figuring shit out themselves? Or do you want to go to Impact, where basically they'll say, hey, Rusev, what do you want to do? Well, you'll be looked at as a bigger star right off the bat, but you won't be on as big of a platform.
You know what? I think that for short-term success, I think you most likely go to AEW. But if he can do a similar deal as, like the Good Brothers and maybe some of these other guys, that if there's like I said, with COVID, you never know when these travel restrictions are going to be lifted. But I think he's a perfect guy to work in New Japan with his style. So if he could do a similar thing like with the Good Brothers, where he can work in Impact and New Japan, I think that's where he should go. Because I think he would be perfect for New Japan.
Yeah, I think he'd be fantastic in New Japan. So, yeah.
Like they have a relationship, some sort of relationship like with Ring of Honor and, CMLL, or, work at all those places, especially the fact that AEW, they have a relationship with CMLL, or I'm sorry, AAA. And I think that you want to be able to work at all these places. I think that's where you have to go. So, I mean, if you're telling me that Rusev is, or Miro, whatever his name is going to be, is going to go and get, maybe he's going to win a TV championship from Cody. He's going to be the surprise guy, and he wins the title, and you're going to get that super push, which I wouldn't do, because I think that puts a little bit of a bad taste in the mouth to your locker room at this point, saying you're just going to bring in a guy and he's winning the title off of Cody after all of these guys come in. Where I've said on this show and the Pod Jobbers and other places, and once again, before I forget again, I want to thank the Pod Jobbers for having me on watch along this past weekend for Extreme Rules, that disaster of a show, which we may get into in a couple of minutes. I think that, it's a tough sled where you bring in all these ex-WWE, guys in, and you just say, all right, all the guys who've been here for the last, 8-9 months or the last 4 or 5 years, all right, we're pushing you out because you're a bigger star and all that hard work you put in the foundation. We're going to put you in the main event, I mean, like a Brian Cage is slightly different because, he's a whatever. He's a big star in Impact, Lucha Underground, but he's still a guy who's not a lot of people still know. So he almost feels like a guy who's on their level. But Rusev has, been in huge matches against The Undertaker, Cena, all these guys. So, I mean, he's got a name. So he's like,
if Rusev goes there, he's a main eventer.
Right.
Yeah.
But, if you're Rusev, do you sit there and go, hey, Lance Archer got in here, Cage got in here, the former Luke Harper. Unless your name is Dean Ambrose or Chris Jericho, you're a star for a month, and then what happens next? So, I mean, you got to be a little bit scared also. So, I mean, I think there's plus and minuses of going to AEW or going to Impact. I mean, of course, you want to go back and work, and those are the two places that are the most likely option because everyone else doesn't either have TV or is running shows. Because the idea of, I know I'm rambling here, but Michael Bennett or The Miracle, he was just on, the ROH podcast. So unless something crazy happens and ROH doesn't come back, which there's still, of course, there's rumors about that, Michael Bennett and Maria are going back to ROH. I think that's kind of like a known entity at this point, So, I mean, I think you're either going to Impact or AEW if you're Miro or / Rusev.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see. I'd love, hopefully there'll be a vaccine at some point. And then, because what I would love Rusev to do, honestly, is to be on all these shows, to just do one-offs on these shows and establish his character on different shows, be on Ring of Honor 1 week, and here's the other thing. If these companies, ideally, that's what I think he should do, because they would all say, oh, you want to be on our show? Absolutely. And he comes on these shows and he kicks ass or whatever. That's what I would love to see. Obviously, he doesn't have that option. So I don't know. I think the best thing is to go to Impact. It'll be a big fish in a small pond. He can go there for 6 months, a year, whatever, establish himself a little bit more. Then maybe when things calm down, maybe we have a vaccine. Who the hell knows? Then he does the, New Japan and Ring of Honor. Who knows? But it just sucks. His options are limited. But he's obviously the biggest star out of here. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the Good Brothers. Obviously, there's been the thing with Heyman, and supposedly Heyman lied to them. But it's still interesting that Vince McMahon's the one that fired him, but Vince is getting no heat here.
Oh yeah. If you're on the cut list, Vince has a final say, no matter what Paul Heyman does.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Paul Heyman was fired 2 weeks later. So I mean,
absolutely.
Let's be honest here.
And that's the thing. It's like this guy also got fired, but but again, that's what we do, right? So it's just those sort of things can just be interesting to me. Like, let's, instead of blaming the person who actually did it, let's blame Paul Heyman, who has no authority to fire anybody. So that's interesting. What'd you think of the Good Brothers debut? I found it lacking, to be honest with you. Their promos were kind of the too cool for school promos, kind of like reminded me of like the Nash and Hall promos back in the day, but like not nearly as good. I don't know. I was not impressed at all by them.
Well, the perfect words there. I mean, that's who they are, isn't it? That's who they've always been. They're the NWO. That's what that's basically what they've kind of put their characters are. They're the funny guys. They're too cool for school. They're the NWO. They're the outsiders. They're Hall and Nash.
But Nash and Hall were really good at it.
I mean, but you know what? It's 1 week. So, I mean, we got to give everything a chance. I mean, I wonder, though, does the common fan, not me and you who are slightly jaded, me more jaded than you are, because you still have a soul, I think, when it comes to watching wrestling, unlike me, is Ace Austin and Madman Fuller bigger stars because they were in 2 segments with the Good Brothers, and the more people know who Ace Austin is after, a 4-day period, they knew who they were. And part of their job is putting over, the younger talent. So did they do their job? But is that also 2 separate? Am I skirting the question there? I mean, I don't know. Because, I mean, if part of their job was to get Ace Austin over as a bigger star and more people know who he is, because I'll be honest, I watched a couple episodes of MLW. So I knew the idea of who Ace Austin was. but I know who Ace Austin is now, 1,000% more because of his interaction with the Good Brothers and being in that main event and being in those angles on both Impact, than before, in any sort of thing with, Eddie Edwards and whatever else he was doing over the last 6 months and being my headliner on that show. So, I mean, they're stars. So, I mean,
I think the one thing about the Good Brothers that's interesting, right, is they were in New Japan for a long time, and they were Finn Balor's henchmen. Right. Then they were in the WWE, and then they were AJ's henchmen. They actually haven't really done a lot of work individually in terms of cutting promos and establishing who they are. And the most they've done is on Talking Shop, with the podcast. That's really the most stuff that they're known for.
It almost felt like they were there also just to promote their special.
Well, yeah, I mean that. Yeah, and that's fine. Obviously, we're working both angles, but I think we still need to know who they are a little bit. I mean, we know who they are, but I think we need to see either more fire from their promos, a little less too cool for school. I don't know. I just want to. I was wanting something different there, and I didn't get it. But we'll see how things work over the next few weeks.
Hey, and you know what? I think this was Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful.com said this on their post show after the pay-per-view. It would have been super cool if they were rumoring the idea of the return of Aces and Eights. If Madman Fulton, Ace Austin, and the two of them were the new Aces and Eights, and the idea was the Ace and Aces and Eights was Ace Austin, and it was the four of them as the Good Brothers, and that was the new Aces and Eights. They were actually a group together, and you put Ace Austin as the new leader, and this was like a super group. And I think the Good Brothers are better as heels than goofy baby faces. I think that's part of the problem.
I think this will be the chance to see that, right? Like, this will be their chance to see, hey, can they be a Hall and Nash, cool baby faces, or do they not have that ability? So I guess we'll ultimately find out.
And like I said, we'll keep on looking on how Impact does every week, and if they're worth checking out. I mean, they're setting up interesting storylines. They have new tag team champions. We'll see how.
What do you think about their the empty arena? I mean, that's a fucking empty arena. Like, there's the cameraman there and nobody else. What do you think about that setup?
It was different. It was definitely different. I didn't like
because they're testing everyone for COVID, right? So they could have an audience, but they're choosing not to have an audience at all. I think it's different, but I don't know. I think it takes something away. Like when the Motor Machine Guns won the title, it's like they won the title, and then a hush went over the crowd. I
guess we're taping this on the first day of the Major League Baseball season. I guess we'll find out exactly how interesting that is, and I guess in a couple hours when the Yankees and Washington face.
Well, they're gonna pump in crowd noise, so they're gonna do like what they've done with soccer, what they're gonna do with the NBA.
Oh, okay, so I guess
they're gonna pump in crowd noise, so it'll be fine. It'll be okay. And honestly, like the one thing that's gonna be jarring about baseball, not to get on baseball, is the fact that you're gonna see a guy batting and there's gonna be nobody in the stands but behind him. I think for me, watching baseball, that's gonna be the jarring thing. But it's something to bet on, right? So.
Exactly. So like I said, we'll keep an eye out to see if they have some interesting stuff on Impact. We'll work them into the rundown every week, and if it's crappy shows, we won't be talking about them. So Impact, put on stuff that we find interesting. We'll talk about you. If not, we'll go back to the way it's been for the last, on and off for the last 6 years of us doing these shows. So it's up to you, Impact, to make us interested. Jay, something that I put up in the show notes, and I didn't exactly explain it perfectly, so I do apologize. So one of the things I brought up was, do bad finishes ruin great matches or great pay-per-views? So Extreme Rules. We can get into the swamp match and what that disaster was, and if you want to talk about if Alexa Bliss was Sister Abigail the whole time or whatever that disaster was. But I think that Extreme Rules, I thought a lot of the matches on that show were quality matches. But the finishes in a lot of these matches were pretty bad finishes. So I want to bring up to you, do bad finishes to these matches lessen the pay-per-view or lessen the matches themselves? Because I mean,
I think so.
I mean,
I thought the Sasha Banks Asuka match was awesome. I think it was a great match until the end. Until the end. And that's why I like the Bayley and Nikki Cross match was great because they had an end, right? She cheated to win. That's fine. She's a heel. That's what she's supposed to do. Still made Nikki Cross look good because she had to be, she had to cheat to win. And here's the thing. Meltzer said this, I don't know, whatever, last couple of days, that I think Asuka was just supposed to win. And then McMahon changed his mind and made this goofy finish. So, yeah, that absolutely took away from the match.
And, like you could say that about the Mysterio versus Rollins match. I thought they had a really fun match. I thought it was really well done. And you got this crap with the taking out the eye and him puking at the end. I mean,
oh my God, it was so dumb.
It takes away from quality matches. I mean, I disagree with Meltzer when it comes to the tag team match. I thought New Day and Cesaro versus Nakamura was one of the better tag team matches we've seen in a while when it comes to the WWE. I mean, I thought it was solid.
I didn't think it was like a great match. I thought it was a
really solid match. But I thought a lot of these matches on that show, I thought were really good matches. And then the end of the match, kind of like you're sitting there going, all right, the end of the match was really like, okay, so was this like a good show? Like I said, I was watching.
I would not say it was a good show. Like that swamp match. I mean, there were some elements that were interesting in it. Here's the thing: Strowman doesn't convince me at all as a main event guy. I think he's terrible. So to me, like, I'm not gonna like his stuff anyway. I thought the Drew McIntyre Ziggler match was interesting, where only one guy could do hardcore rules, and then the next day they literally. Ziggler is literally begging on his knees for a rematch. It made him look like such a loser. Like how do they not realize they're making him like a complete loser? Oh my God. WWE does things that I just.
We might talk about it on another show, but I mean, and people have spoken about this for years now. The last star the WWE made was John Cena, and we might get and this is
15 years ago. You could say CM Punk. You could, but he kind of made himself. But we could also say WWE gave him the platform. So we can say CM Punk. I would consider him a star, and we could say Cena.
Right, and people go back and forth on Roman Reigns if he's a star or not.
I
don't think so. But but the idea over here is like when you treat. You just said his name.
McIntyre?
No.
Ziggler?
Dolph Ziggler basically begging on his hands and knees the idea to go and get another shot at the title and stuff like that. You don't come across as a star. I know you're.
Why, Corey, why in the world would I want to watch that match? He beat him. Then he's on his knees begging for a match. So I'm going to say, yeah, let me watch Raw to watch this guy who was he's a I don't want to use the term. I don't want to use the P word or whatever because that's inappropriate for women. But he's a wuss. He's a loser. He's a jobber. Why do I want to see a jobber match? Why do I want to watch Barry Horowitz? Like, oh, next week, hey, you could watch Iron Mike Sharp wrestle. No, thank you. Why do I want to watch that? And for you guys who don't know, who are newer, whatever, not 40 years old like Corey and I, those are jobbers back in the 80s who would lose every match, right? Like, why do I want to see? There's a reason why their ratings suck. And I do think that's a deeper dive for a show in the future. But to answer your original question, absolutely. These goofy finishes, I think it was not a good show partially based on that. Like, I thought the show was okay with some really good match. I thought the two women's matches, one of them could have been one of the better matches they've had in the WWE. I think Asuka and Sasha was on pace to be maybe the best match they've had this year. And then they screwed it up with that finish. That was so annoying.
Yeah, you sit there and go in, all right, we're having a great match. I understand you don't want to most likely have Sasha right now lose because she's most likely the MVP of the company with Bayley at the moment. But what are we doing here? I mean, then the very next night we go and have Sanford McMahon come out, and then we're doing, and then because, and this is a whole different thing, the idea of, all right, our big matches now aren't on the pay-per-view anymore because pay-per-views don't matter. It's all about the TV ratings, which are a disaster. I mean, Matt Riddle losing clean to AJ Styles on SmackDown isn't on the pay-per-view. Not that anybody cares, and we saw from the ratings. Big Show losing to Randy Orton is not on the pay-per-view. I mean, so it's, and then we're promoting not on the pay-per-view. We're going to have this barroom brawl or whatever with Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus on SmackDown, which both of us are going to have to sit through for some reason. Not on the pay-per-view, thank God, but on SmackDown.
You know what I can do that I can't do on pay-per-view? I can fast forward. I'll be watching baseball and then I'll watch SmackDown and fast forward through that match. No, the idea, here's the thing. The idea is sound to put some of your bigger matches. Here's the question. Are they big matches? Raw had a horrible rating, and they pumped up this Orton Big Show match, and still nobody watched it. So they're hyping these matches up, and they're still not getting good ratings. What does that tell you? They aren't big matches. They haven't created stars.
That match wasn't a big match 15 years ago when they did it then. I mean, let's be.
And I'm going to say and I'm going to give WWE credit. They did a good job of hyping the match up. I think Orton has been fantastic. I think his promo was great. I thought the Big Show's promo was amazing. He went back to when they were, friends back in the day and blah, blah, on the road. I love how they're linking in kind of Orton's history with these guys into these stories. So I think that was absolutely phenomenal. We're hearing the rumors going to be Drew against Randy Orton. They've done such a good job with Orton, and he has such a kind of a history with these guys, and they've played into that history. I wonder, and I think SummerSlam's August 18th or something.
23rd, I think it is.
The 23rd, so they're gonna have like less than a month to get that feud over.
Apparently, they were supposed to start to build for that this past week.
But we had to have
a rematch next week with Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre, and right.
I'm sure they'll do something then. I'm sure Randy Orton will, go after Drew or what have you. And I guess that's pretty much the biggest match you can have on Raw. I mean, pretty much, right? But building that matchup, a guy who's been champion, who's been okay. Orton should win the title at SmackDown. Or at SummerSlam. That's the way they built him up. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I thought Extreme Rules was okay with a really great match and a potential good match that they screwed up, and some other things that were not horrible.
Yeah, we're running a little low on time here, so this is something I wanted to bring up quickly before we move on to our last couple of things. I don't know if you realize this, and I might be slightly wrong on this, and this is one of the prime examples of Paul Heyman no longer being in control of storylines. Do you realize that Aleister Black either lost his first ever match basically on the main roster or his second match ever, and he just basically wasn't even spoken about? I know that he lost or was disqualified in the build for AJ versus Undertaker, and then he got the win back the following week. But basically, he just lost clean to Seth Rollins, and it wasn't even made a big deal about it. It was basically the first time he lost on TV. Aleister Black is nothing now.
We know what they're doing with Aleister Black. He's going the way of Cesaro. He's going the way. They don't know. They don't know what. My buddy Dugan, one of the guys at my wedding, a guy I love, who's a wrestling fan, kind of left during the Attitude Era. Came back during the CM Punk era. He was the guy who got him back. And he said he watches occasionally, but doesn't really watch that much anymore. He watches BTE, whatever. And he watched Aleister Black. He's like, oh, they can't screw this guy up. That was his line. He's like, there's no way they can screw this guy up. And I said, oh, Dugan, you don't know what the WWE can do. And they're screwing him up. How do they screw him up? He's great in the ring. He is good on the mic. He's got an interesting dark character that young people, teenagers, this kind of brooding character might be into. how did they? I don't know. I don't know. It's almost like they do this on purpose.
Okay.
It's almost like they absolutely. Who said it? Meltzer or Brian Alvarez? One of the guys said the WWE's thing is they want to get the company over. They don't want to get the wrestlers over. They want to get the company over. And maybe that's what this is, because they sure as shit aren't getting the wrestlers over.
Well,
what are they doing with Aleister Black? Come on.
That's the whole idea of, they say you root for the laundry, not the players. That sounds like the WWE's mentality right now. You root for the company, not the performers, almost like. And that's not what. And unfortunately, yeah, I mean, sometimes when you have like the ratings come out every week with AEW and NXT, where you have the diehards that root just for the WWE, are like, AEW is not really good. They've got all these problems, and NXT it's Nielsen really doesn't matter in this, or the other way, where if the weeks NXT wins, AEW is great, and it's just this and that. So I mean, you have brand loyalty, but
but that's not what this is. That's not even what this is about, right? This is about the idea. You know why AEW is winning in the ratings? We just talked about it. Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, right? And you could say, well, those are all former WWE guys that WWE established as stars, and that's true. But Moxley has kind of changed his character since leaving the WWE, kind of becoming a different guy. And Jericho has done the same thing. He always reinvents himself with the Inner Circle, right? So these guys were stars from the WWE, sure, but they've kind of reestablished them as characters. So they are winning a ratings war because of stars, not because of brand loyalty. That's why they're winning the ratings. They had 690,000 people when Moxley wasn't there. Now they have 845 when he is there.
Absolutely. So before we get out of here, just quickly, apparently this week and next week will be the final two times we see Kairi Sane on the WWE TV before she goes back to Japan to be, I guess, a brand ambassador. Jay, she got one hell of a final, apparently, win against the SmackDown champion. I'm guessing next week we see her maybe in a rematch and maybe get taken out by the Queen of Spades, and that's how we end her run in WWE. You think that's what they do, or do we see something else?
I think that's probably what happens. And it's again, it's good that she's going to Japan to be with her husband, and thank goodness for that, and good for her. Another just wasted piece of talent, man. Just wasted. I mean, she basically was a jobber in the WWE, Corey. Not in NXT, but on the main roster. How many matches did she win? Like, she never won matches. It also showed you the respect that she has from the women, that I'm sure Bayley was like, listen, I want her to beat me. I want to put her over in her last match. So it shows you the respect that the women have for her. But again, another case on essentially Kairi Sane being a jobber in the WWE, but she was great. The limited matches that they gave her, the time that they gave her, other than when she was with Asuka, she was the champion with Asuka, so she wasn't jobbing out then. But the other time, she pretty much did. I don't know, just another sad case of a wasted talent from the WWE. But I'm sure she'll get taken out next week.
Yeah, she had a good career. Almost wish she never left NXT at this point. Would have loved to have seen the match that they had slightly promoted on Raw Talk last week against Asuka. I guess that's not going to happen now, unless
that would have been a great sending off. You said it. We've never seen a match between Asuka and Io and Kairi. We've never seen between the Stardom 3, whatever you want to say, right? The women, probably the 3 best wrestlers in the company. So just interesting. Well, let's not have the Japanese wrestlers wrestle each other, because we don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, only thing you could think of, and I'm sure they're not doing it because everything's happening at the Performance Center. Could they have taped? Could they be taping SummerSlam match? Her versus Asuka, and it just happens there, and we just taped it now. Is there any chance that happens?
No, because they got to do TV work to get there. No.
Yeah, they just tape stuff and just air it then. I mean, I'm hoping for the best, but I know it's not happening. But just throwing that out there. It's not going to happen. But Jay, final thing on the agenda, at least for me, and I'm sure there's things that we've missed. on a non-WWE, AEW, and Impact note, guy that we really like. We saw him live win the title for MLW. Joseph Fatu will be not going anywhere for forever. Basically, he re-signed with MLW until 2025. So he is staying safe in the confines in the MLW. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think this is a mistake for a guy who we both have seen, like I said, with a lot of potential? Do you think this is a mistake for him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I like MLW. I think they've done some good stuff. He should leave. Like, I mean, because I thought they said he signed a long-term deal last year, and then I guess he signed like a longer-term deal this year. I don't know.
Yeah, they restructured the deal.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Of course they should keep him. This reminds me of like Ronald Acuna signing like a 12-year deal when he like just got to the Braves. It's like the same thing. Yeah, he's great. I think he would be a top guy in Impact. AEW, they do funny things, but I think he'd be a top guy there because they don't have anybody like him. They don't have a character like him. His promos are, he's not like the best on the mic, but he's kind of like the screaming Samoa Joe, where he's like, I'm a badass. I'm gonna F you up, and he could like say that because he does. He's such a unique talent to have a big man who can move like that, who's got that agility. Yeah, man, I think, but good for MLW and good for him if that's what he wants.
And he's a force of nature. Like I said, I've seen MLW less than you have. The times that I have seen him, especially when we saw him live together in Chicago when he won the title, he seemed like a guy who was the future of the business. I understand, the stability of a paycheck, especially during COVID. I mean, you see this with like a Miles in the NFL, like a Myles Garrett and some other guys getting that guaranteed money, not knowing what the future holds. So, I mean, you can never fault the guy for, saying, what, my future is now intact. So, I mean, you never know if maybe that was part of the reason. And maybe having the trust factor, the fact that Court Bauer has had a long-term relationship with the Wild Samoans. Wild Samoans gave Court Bauer his start back in the day. So maybe there's a friendship there. But, at the same point, family members work in the WWE. So I'm surprised, I know everyone is related within that, but I know that has relationships with the Usos I've read in the past. So I'm surprised that that's not maybe a factor, or maybe he's spoken to the Usos and found out that, not maybe the best place to work at the moment. So maybe that be part of it.
Bingo.
So
I mean, maybe that was part of it too, right? It's like, hey, you can go to the WWE. Also, I don't know how old he is. They say he's been a professional since 2012. So maybe he's in his mid-20s or maybe mid to late 20s or whatever. So he stays there for a couple of years, then he's in his early 30s, and then he goes to the WWE or whatever. So, but he gets booked well. He gets booked as a star. You talk about MLW. Some of the things they do I don't love, and I think they do some goofy stuff, but they have made him a main eventer. Like, he is MLW. So, and for him, that feels good. And they've talked about in business, and I've used this many times, people are motivated much more by praise than money. And they've praised him, and they've shown that to him by giving him the title, by making him the main eventer. And so, that makes him feel good. He wrestles less dates. He's on the road all the time. He can wrestle probably in other companies too. Well, I don't know if they're allowing that. I think they're not allowing that anymore. But
I think companies that do not have TV. Basically.
But he can wrestle. He can, so he can wrestle independent. He can still make money that way too. So, good for him if that's what he wants in his life. I totally respect that. I wouldn't have done that, but also we also have to consider the climate that there is now, right? There's Impact, there's AEW and WWE. That's it.
No idea what's going on with ROH, and we have no idea.
Yeah, and if they said, hey, we're going to take care of you. And that's the one thing MLW, we got to give them credit for. They are not losing many guys. Right. They are not losing many people even during this. We saw NWA, Ziggy Dice left, Ricky Starks left. MLW has been able to keep. So Court Bauer, as a booker, I think he's okay. As a businessman, I think he's pretty brilliant. So, we'll see what happens with MLW for sure. So,
Jay, I think we covered a lot of interesting topics. As always, thank you for joining me this week. Jay, let people know how they can follow us on the social medias.
Yep. I've actually been, the reason why we're ending the show is because a beer delivery was made to my favorite beer store, and I have to run there to get it before it gets sold out. And I don't have a car because my wife took the car to go to upstate New York, so I have to walk there. So please pray for me that I can get this beer. Anyway, obviously don't pray for me. I'm being fun. Getting a hold of us at Worked Shoot Pod, WROKED Shoot Pod. I said some stuff on Twitter that people disagreed with. Apparently, I said, why is Diamante fighting for the title? And people corrected me, said it's a non-title match, but they also said, we agree with you. They should do more. We should have heard from Diamante more. So anyway, on Twitter at Work Shoot Pod, sometimes we'll live tweet the shows if we feel like it, if they're good enough. We are on Facebook, the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast, Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast on Facebook. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We are on Instagram. What's our Instagram name?
Work Shoot Pod.
Okay. So Work Shoot Pod on Instagram as well. I don't know what we do on there. Someone else controls that. I don't know a lot about Instagram. I'm very bad on there. So you can find us on Instagram as well. We're asking everybody to, leave a 5-star review if you can. It helps us immensely. Leave a review, and we'll read it on the air. So, yep, a lot of ways to get a hold of us. We'll have another show this week, which I think is gonna be fun. Maybe a little different than our usual shows. Thanks.
And as always, follow our sister podcast. You Don't Know Jackie. They did part 2 of the final 4 episodes of the Netflix series Unsolved Mysteries. Always entertaining when it comes to aliens and abductions and everything else that are.
Watched a couple of the episodes. They were pretty good. Did you watch them?
No, not yet. But
They weren't bad actually. They were too long though. They were too long. They should do 2. They should have done 2 cases in the. You guys might be noticing a theme if you listen to the podcast. I like things short.
Everything's very short.
I like more compact. Give me more and less time. I want more and less time.
He likes things really small, apparently. But definitely follow them. Don't know Jackie. And Jackie Endy runs our Instagram, so thank you for that. And definitely follow the Pod Jobbers on iTunes. Thank you for having me on their watch along, and we'll try to have them on sometime in the next couple of weeks. They do a really interesting job. But Jay, as always, the final word is yours. Is apparently about to lose my voice as I get ready to watch a little baseball tonight.
I think we're done here. See ya.